Hey guys, welcome back for another video. So today I'm getting ready to start on a restoration project. I've got this old brush hog. This is an actual brand name. It's actually the Bush Hog, actual Bush Hog name. And if you can see, it's the Bush Hog Rebel. And still has a little bit of tag left on it, so probably can't see that there, but this is actually, the model is, yeah, you can't read that. It's the RB60R is what this thing is. So it's a 5-foot brush hog. I found one, I found a couple online, and it looks like these things were made in the early 80s. I found one that I think was dated 1984. So I'm just gonna say this is somewhere, somewhere in the early 80s, which puts it at somewhere in the neighborhood of, 30 to 35 years old. So it's an old piece of equipment, but it's really, I don't know, it's salvageable. It's not in great shape, but I was looking at some used ones last year, and a lot of the ones I looked at, the older ones, the decks were completely rusted out. Gearboxes were really loose, tail wheels were basically trashed. And this one, the deck seems pretty solid. The gearbox is nice and tight. When I got this thing last year, I did change the oil in the gearbox. It was real milky in there, it had gotten water in it, so that was the first thing that I did. And I used it a little bit, just kind of messing around. I mowed a little bit of tall grass and took out some stuff out in the timber, but I knew I wanted to actually do some repairs. So just kind of give you an idea of everything we got going on here. I guess to start off with, I've got a number of welds that I'm going to have to fix. So you can see, I think you can see that there. This is split out. So this that sideboard, or what is basically like the skid plate, has been separated. So there's places like that where this needs to be bent back, welded, and then I'm probably going to reinforce it. The actual skids themselves are just completely worn through, so I need to build this up, fix that. I've got several places. There's this crossbar on, the actual bar that attaches to the top link. You can see this is all kind of separated. I need to, it had a shield on it at one point in time, and I'm not really worried too much about a shield over the PTO, but what I might do, since this sits outside and this plug has I guess it's probably like a breather hole, I actually may build a shield over it to protect it from rain. That's my primary concern. It's got, there's welds all over it that need to be fixed. The this bar that goes up to the top link has been, as you can see, it's pretty wavy, pretty bent, so I might straighten that out a little bit. As you're going over rough ground and the back of the mower comes up, I think it's probably come up so much that it's just kinked that thing, and it's not going to really affect function, but I'll probably try to straighten that out. I've got at least one, let's see, I think that was on this PTO shaft. There's a grease zerk there that's busted off that I need to see if I can get out of there and get that replaced. I need to, right now, the way this top, when I try to get my top link in here, this top assembly just sort of crushes together, and I have to use a pry bar to open this up to get this in there. So I need to put a spacer in there so I can more easily get this thing on the tractor. I've got, so these bolts here that actually attach the, I don't even know what you call this, but basically the top link frame to the actual mower deck itself. You can see, well, I've got it on jack, so you can't actually see, but that front right side is loose, so maybe you can see. So anyway, that's loose, so right now the deck doesn't sit level, so I need to see if I can get that bolt out of there. I've already cranked on it a little bit, but it's tight. I may have to heat that up to get that out of there, so that's got to come out. I'm trying to think what else I have. So there's kind of a handful of things that I need to do on this thing. And then I've got some places too where there's just some, there was one split that I saw on the deck that needed to be welded up. But anyway, so just kind of a bunch of general stuff to this thing, and who knows, I may even throw a coat of paint on it just to kind of clean it up. And Then I've got some work to do with this thing. Actually, it's the reason why I'm doing this. I just bought a property that's got probably, I'm gonna say probably 2 or 3 acres of it is all overgrown. It's gonna make nice what I'm envisioning to be pasture land for like horses probably when I go to resell the property. So I want to get it cleaned up a little bit, but I want to have this thing functioning a little bit better before I go and put some hours on it. So I thought I'd just show you guys the process that I'm going to go through and see if we can't turn this old ugly turd into something that's a good functioning machine again. So first thing I'm going to try to do here is see if I can get these bolts loose for the lift arm frame. So I don't know if you can see this, but so basically this bolt, I think what's going on here is there's not enough threads on this bolt to be able to get that tight. So if I can get that nut off, put a couple of washers in there, and then tighten that back on, then I think that'll take up the slack there, and that should be good. This side over here it's a lot better. It's got a little bit of play in, and if I could put just a tap on that, tighten it up a little bit, I think we'd be good to go. But I already tried wrenching on this a little bit once before, and I haven't had any luck getting it off yet. So, but then I realized that I only had my air set at like 90 pounds. So I'm going to turn up the compressor a little bit, turn up the regulator, I should say, and see if I can budge it. Finally. So there you can see on that bolt how it's all kind of rounded off from the years of bouncing around in there. And actually I can see now this used to have threads on it, but just from getting banged around for so long, I didn't think it had threads to tighten it up. It's just somebody didn't take care of it, let it get loose, flattened out the threads, and that's why that bolt's just completely destroyed, so I'll have to replace that. I'm guessing the other side will probably look the same. Well, it took some work, but I finally got those nuts off there. It took me standing on about a 3-foot breaker bar to get that nut loose. This side luckily wasn't near as tight. I was able to get it off pretty easy, but now I got it snugged up really nice. So I got that play out of there, so that's good. Now what I want to do is I need to get a spacer in here so that when I put my top link in, right now I have to pry it open every time I put that in there. So I'm just going to I'm going to replace this bolt. I'm going to put a new spacer, and I think before I do that, this bar has seen better days, so I'm sure there's a chance it'll get bent again if if the tractor goes low and the rear end of the cutter goes high. It can get crushed in there and get bent again. But I'm gonna see if I can get that straightened out a little bit, so at least it looks better for now. Alright, that bar is far from perfect, but it's a lot better than it was before, and it's definitely good enough for who it's for. So let's see if we can get this thing put together. So I made two spacers. I'm gonna run through this bolt, and then that bar I'm gonna put in between those spacers. Actually, I found the original owner's manual of this thing online, and the way it came from the factory, it looks like the chain end of this actually was up here, but I think I prefer to have it flipped around the way that I got it with the chain down low, so I'm just gonna leave it that way. The next thing I want to try to address is this tail wheel. It's got all kinds of play in it, and I think there should be plenty of room to get a bushing underneath that cap to take up that play. So there's that's one of those, I don't know what you call those, spring pin, push pin. What do you call those? Somebody comment, tell me what you call those. But I can see that this looks like this might be a little bit of a challenge. I don't know if you'll be able to see that on camera very well, but there's a dent right there that this thing got hit with something. So I think that it's probably not gonna, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to get that collar off of there the way it is. So I've got to see if I can clean up that dent, get it to the point where I can get that collar off of there. I just thought of it, roll pins, what these things are called, and I'm having a heck of a time getting this thing out of here. So somebody leave me a comment and tell me, is there a reason why this is superior to just running a bolt through there with a lock nut? Seems like it'd be a lot easier than dealing with this stupid thing. Got 35 years of rust and it does not want to come out. All right, so if anybody's fighting one of those air hammers, definitely the way to get it started. Man, those things are difficult to get out. I guarantee you, I'm putting a bolt back in there. Okay, finally, I got that thing off of there. Holy cow, was that a battle. Way more than I expected. I don't know how long I've been beating on that thing, but this is 1/4-inch wall pipe, and I don't know if you can tell on camera, but I've completely mushroomed both ends of this thing, beating on that to get it out. So I've got a torch, but I don't have any gas for it. So the only way I have to heat that up is just with a little MAP gas bottle, which is, it definitely helped. I could tell once I got it warm, it made it easier to beat out of there, but it's out. And if anybody's wondering how I'm gonna get it back on there, I'm wondering the same thing. This could get interesting. So there is, of course, a grease zerk on here, but while I've got this thing apart, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a good greasing. Of course, my bushing was too small too, so I had to take the die grinder and make that a little bit bigger. And I took that emery cloth and I cleaned that shaft up as well as I could. I also cleaned up the inside of that collar. And now, what do you know? Look at that, amazing. Still a little bit of a bind there, but not bad. Oh, there's my spot that's rubbing right there. If I knock, you won't be able to probably see it on the camera. There's a little bit of a high spot right there that I'm still rubbing on, so I'm just gonna hit that with the die grinder real quick. Oh, I bet it'll slide right on. Look at that. Perfect. So it looks like with that bushing in there, I've got, oh, I don't know, it's kind of tilted a little bit. I'm gonna have a good 16th, maybe a strong 16th of play in there, so I think that's probably gonna be about perfect. All right, so I don't have a bolt to go in here like I said I was going to use. So I've cleaned up that roll pin, got all the rust off it, kind of freshened up the chamfers on each end. Each end looks like they're about the same. So I guess I'm going to see if I can get this thing back in here. It's got to be easier going back in than coming out, right? Easier, but it's still tight. Man, oh man. There. There's still a bit of play there, but there's definitely way less than there was before, and I don't want it to be too tight, so. There you go. I have to admit, if I had known how hard that thing was going to be to take apart, I might have just left it the way it was before, but whatever. It's done. I'm glad it's done. I'll hit that, fill this baby up with grease, and move on to the next step. Well, after all that, guess what? That grease zerk is rusted shut. I gotta see if I can get that thing open to take grease. Otherwise, I may have to replace it. Yep, I'm gonna have to replace that grease zerk too. Since I'm gonna have to get a different grease zerk for that tail wheel, I think the threads are actually different on the new ones that I have than the old ones. So that's why it doesn't want to go in there. Since I know I have to get one for that, I am gonna see if I can get this zerk out of this PTO shaft. I can try to get it different size or style or something for this one. I can do that too. So I don't know, I've got this set of removers here, extractor, and I've had limited success with these things in the past. I don't know what everybody else's experience has been with these things, but I'll see what happens. Look at that. I didn't even have to go to the extractor bit, just the actual one that hogs it out took it out. Cool. Well, that was easier than I expected. Not very often something goes easier than you expect. So, just have to figure out what thread size this is. That's the old one off the tail wheel. There's the new ones I have. Alright, so for the PTO shaft, looks like the new ones I have will work. The question I have is it going to be too long? I tried to get as shorter ones I could, but you can see the difference on the tail wheel versus the new ones, how much shorter that is. And I think for back there, this style is going to be too long. I think it's actually going to interfere with that shaft, so I guess I can just grind it off and shorten it up. And I may have to do the same thing for this one, I don't know. I'll put it in here, see if it fits. Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah, it's just a hair too long, so I guess I'll just take it to the grinder. Actually, it sits inside a shoulder. Let me try this. I think it's too long. It hits. Well, at least it's the right thread size. Okay, so that was a fail. I guess I thought that spring stop was probably up in there a lot further, but I just barely touched the end of it and the spring popped out. So I guess I'm just gonna have to get shorter threads is all I can do. All right, so I picked up some short stem grease zerks. You can see it's not a lot of difference. It's probably, oh, I don't know, it's good, probably a 1/16 of an inch, maybe a little bit more shorter than the ones I had before. And I did figure out that tail wheel where I thought possibly it was a different thread. It's just a standard 1/4 inch. It's just that the threads on that tail wheel just a little bit goobered up, but I was able to carefully put it in and it took it no problem and seated up no problem, so not going to be an issue there. Get that one in. Now we can grease up our PTO shaft. And we're in business. So it's time to look at some of these bad welds on this thing. First thing I'm going to work on is these front skids or shoes or whatever you want to call it. Get some light here. So this, you can see clearly, this one is, if you just look at it, it's separated clear out. Kind of flopping in the wind. It's been welded up before, but it's obviously broken there, and then actually it's actually wore all the way through there. So that side for sure needs to be fixed up. This side over here is almost as bad, but it sure looks a lot worse. It's all scabbed. It's all scabbed together there, kind of chunks of weld sort of holding it together. So I need to reinforce both sides. There's a tear here. There's actually a gusset down on the bottom. It just kind of tore out, so I'll just clean that up and throw a bead on there. But my primary concern is going to be getting this front braced up and strengthened. And then there's a couple places in the back here where somebody welded the top pan to this brace, and it's kind of sort of welded on there, but that looks like that's about ready to pop loose. So I'll probably fix that up, and I'll look around and see if there's any other cracks that I see anywhere. While I have the welder out, I'll just get everything patched up as good as I can and get some strength back in this thing. All right, I got all the that cobbled up mess, of welding out of there, and I got that seam opened up. Same thing on this side over here. So now I just need to figure out how I can pull these in together and get everything re-welded. Alright, so that worked out well, using that chain binder as a, basically pull those in, got that one nice and straight. So over here I might need to beat on with a sledge a little bit to help straighten it out a bit, but for the most part it's straight. It's a lot straighter than it was, so I think that's good enough that I can start bracing it up now. Okay, time for a quick update. So I can't remember where I left off last time. I think I remember if I'd showed you, but I got these two sides, these skids cleaned up, and I got them ground out here so my new skids will fit in there well. And my original plan on this was I actually made these beautiful templates. I don't know if you can see that on a chunk of wood and a chunk of old plywood, and I was just bringing some bar stock in to a local welding shop that I've used before because I don't have a press and I don't have a torch. I don't really have a way to bend the steel. And he was going to be like a week out, so I decided that rather than wait a week, I'm not that patient, I'm just going to build these myself. So I actually just cut a few pieces to fit the existing shoes. or skids or whatever you want to call it. And actually I'm going to end up with a better fit this way anyway. This side's pretty straight as far as, you know, being pretty straight. The other side is kind of mangled a little bit, so it'd been really hard to get any kind of a, you know, a custom bent shoe to fit to that other side anyway, so it's probably better that I just custom make it. So got some pieces cut, got a few bevels ground, so my welds should be pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and get these tacked up on here, and I don't know, so this original stuff on here is quarter, and all I have is 3/16, so I think for the amount of use that I'm gonna put on this thing, that's probably gonna be fine. If I really wanted to get crazy, I could add either another layer of 3/16 or I could put some quarter on there, but you know, I'm not going to use this thing all the time. This is just more of an occasional use cutter for me, so this should be just fine. All right, so there we go. Actually, that turned out really well. I'm happy with the result there. All fully beefed up. And actually learned something. So, you know, I'm never claimed to be a good welder, but I've always tried when I'm welding on a vertical, I've always attempted to weld uphill, and I get all goopy and just I end up with a mess. But I actually welded downhill here, and it gave me a really nice bead, so I had to grind that off because that's where I welded up and it was real sloppy. So I guess every time you do something when you're self-taught, you get a little bit better at it. So I guess I just learned something today. Do the other side and figure out what's next up. All right, so I thought I'd give you guys an update on where we're at. I got these front skids all basically built up and reinforced, and as you can see, I actually added kind of a gusset plate here to the front just to kind of stiffen that whole corner. It was kind of cracked and kind of a weak spot before. So got that welded up, strengthened. Had to get a little bit creative on this side because everything was all bent and out of whack, so I sort of shimmed it up and welded it up, and it's strong. It's not going anywhere, and I definitely think that just welding the individual plates in piece was a better option than trying to get some shoes bent. That never would have worked and never would have fit right. So I got that done. I got this really ugly weld back here. Looked like they hit something real hard and it kind of separated from this frame here, so it was just ugly. So got that ground down and welded up a little bit better. The only thing I have to do yet, I broke off this bolt. This is the plate that you access the nuts to replace the blades. I busted that off, so I need to fix that. And then once I get that done, I decided I'm gonna go ahead and put a paint job on this thing. So probably tear it apart and get it broke down a little bit, get the PTO shaft off. I'll probably take off the tail wheel and maybe hit it with a power washer and get it ready for paint. that one was so rusted on there, the lock washer actually just disintegrated. Might need some new hardware. So I think I mentioned at the beginning of the video that one of the things that I was going to do, this thing originally I guess had a shield covered at the PTO shaft, and I was actually going to build a shield, not so much for that, but I wanted to come over and cover the top of the gearbox because it sits outside and I don't want rain to get into that gearbox. But I'm lazy and I don't want to do it. I'm lazy today, I guess. So what I did was I just took an old toolbox that I had laying around that I never used. I popped the lid and the hinges off, and I'm just going to see if I can make this into a cover that I can just throw on there when it's not being used and keep the rain off. Alright, a little off front for the PTO shaft, a little off the back to make sure I can get underneath this bar. Perfect fit. Nice and snug, it's not going anywhere. Yeah, that'll work good. So I just thought I'd show you guys, I found another issue I got to deal with. So I pulled this tail wheel apart so I can try to get it cleaned up. And one of these bolts, so there's 4 bolts that hold this hub assembly to this rim. And one of them's been replaced obviously at some point in time, it's kind of bent. This one here is, I got a vice grips on it, but this one here is completely loose. And on the back side of these, I don't know, there's just like, there's these studs that I'm assuming are supposed to be kind of a press fit type situation, but this thing's just loose. And try putting vice grips on it, but of course these things are just rusted absolutely solid. So I am gonna take the grinder and see if I can cut this thing off of here so I can run a new bolt in there. It's not gonna be easy because I've got no good position in here, but I'll see what I can do. I really would like to replace it. It's probably, you know, it's probably fine like that, but going through all this work, so I want to have that be right too. Alright guys, we're coming down to the home stretch. I got everything all primed up. I primed the actual deck a couple of days ago, and I did end up pulling apart that tail wheel. And I got that all primed too with the back wheel. And you guys saw the struggle that I had getting that thing apart the first time. It came right apart. Once I had the rust off, it was it slid right apart. So we're ready to put some paint on this thing. Just a couple comments on paint. So I was debating on color. I was going to try to, this thing is it's a Bush Hog. It was originally that, I don't know, that kind of bluish gray color. So I was going to try to hunt that down, but in the end, you know what? Everything else I have is orange, so this thing's going to be Kubota orange too. So I'm using just the Rust-Oleum farm and equipment paint from Tractor Supply. That's what I use for the primer as well, which I think should work fine. And I should mention, I've got for a sprayer, this is a Wada gravity fed sprayer, which is a nice sprayer actually. I use this for painting a couple of cars. This is an expensive sprayer, and I didn't really want to use that gun. I kind of wanted just a beater gun for for kind of projects like this. So I broke down and I got the old Harbor Freight $16 purple gun, and you see kind of generally decent reviews on this thing, some mixed reviews. I see a lot of people complain about leaking. So what I figured out when I got this thing, it was leaking all over the place too. And so I broke it all down, and I think people that have a lot of leaking problems probably aren't cleaning it very well, or aren't cleaning it well enough. When you take this, this nozzle off of here, there is, anything that comes from China, you expect it to have some kind of packing grease and, stuff to keep rust at bay, which is normal. But this thing was jam-packed inside the nozzle. The needle and everything had what I would call closer to like a hard wax in it. So acetone wouldn't cut it. I've got some special gun cleaner stuff that I have that will eat. It eats through my rubber gloves. It's nasty stuff, and it barely would eat through this waxy protective coating that they had in there. So it took me quite a bit of time to get everything all cleaned out of there. Once I got the waxy gunk cleaned out of there, then the leaking quit, and it actually sprays okay. It's nothing like my Iwata, but for what it is, for 16 bucks for painting farm equipment, I think it's a decent gun. I'm glad I got it. I don't really worry. I clean it pretty well because I want it to last, and I don't really see any reason why it won't last if I continue to clean it. But if I get a little sloppy and don't get something clean and it plugs up on me, I'll throw it away. It's no big deal. It's 16 bucks. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents. I've used it twice now, and it does okay for what it is. I think it's a good purchase. So I'm going to do a little bit of looking. I think I'm going to thin this stuff down like 4 to 3, something like that. Kind of seems like what people have had luck with, and it's a fairly thick paint. So I'm going to go ahead and mix some of this up. I think I'm going to go ahead and start with 4 to 3 reduced ratio. I'm just using regular acetone for my reducer, which for this, I guess this is enamel paint. Seems to be what the recommendation is. We'll get this mixed up. We'll get a little bit of get a couple test shots to the gun, and we're gonna turn this thing orange. All right, it's officially orange. Kubota orange. Turned out good. I fought that stupid cheap gun a little bit. It's like the air, I don't know, air distribution through that thing isn't very good, but anyway, paint is on. Turned out good. It's gonna be good. I should mention too, in case anybody's interested, I did make a video on the sandblaster that I actually used to clean this thing up. I showed you a little bit blast in it before I painted it, and I actually built a homemade sandblaster. If you're interested in seeing that, I'll leave a link down below or at the end of this video or something so you can check that out. So anyway, next step is I'm gonna let this sit probably all day. It's really hot, humid, mostly humid, sticky day today. So before I go handling it a bunch, I'm just gonna let this sit here and kind of bake in the sun, let the paint set up and get good and hard. And then probably tomorrow I'll get everything assembled, get everything all greased up, and we'll be ready to give this thing a test cut. Well, shoot, I forgot to get the camera turned on, but I got that tail wheel assembly put back together. Not too much trouble. Sorry for not turning the camera on. Lots of grease. Alright guys, so one final thing that I want to do here before I give this thing a test run. When I got this thing, the guy I bought it from said it had new or newer blades on it, and if I can get these off here I'll show you. They do actually look like they're newer blades, but for some reason, again I'll show you, they are they're bent up. So the tips, I laid a flat edge underneath there. I can't remember if I already mentioned this, but I laid a level under there, and on the bottom of either blade, and the blade tips are up probably like 1.5 inches or 2 inches higher than what they should be. So it's like, for some reason, I don't know if the previous owner was beating on stumps with it and that bent the blades, or why exactly they're bent up the way they are. But I wasn't going to do this, but I really think it's going to cut way better with blades at the proper angle. So if I can get these things off here, I'll show you what these look like compared to some new blades that I picked up today, and you'll see how crazy these things are bent. But this is a big, what is this? Inch and 11/16 is what this nut is, and I have no idea how tight these are. Hopefully I can break them loose. Alright, so I'm happy that came off. No problem. Everything else in this machine is so rusted. I had a feeling that probably wouldn't come off either, but no problem. Okay guys, just to show you a quick comparison of the new blade and this old blade. And I kind of, I took a wire brush to this trying to find if there's any stamping on here, because I thought that, well, I can see that it says 36 on here. I can't see anything other than just 36. So I really don't know who made this blade or really what it came from. But you can see, so the new blade that I picked up, you can see the angle and the cut from, you know, obviously it's inverted. So from the bottom of the stump jumper, that blade is 2.5 inches is what that hangs down. And you can see this old bent blade. So that's flat. I mean, literally there's like 1/2 inch that this thing, 1/2 inch from the bottom of the stump jumper that this thing would have hung down. So definitely way bent. And it's kind of twisted this way too, and severely bent down. So the only thing I can figure, I'd be curious, leave me a comment down below if anybody has seen this happen before. But my guess is that probably somebody was cutting trees or saplings or something with it, and they were just beating it on stumps or something. It's not rocks, because the actual cutting blade's in actually it's really good shape. So the only thing I can figure is that somebody was beating this on stumps, and then eventually it actually bent that blade up, changing that angle. But be curious if anybody else has run into this. It's got more experience with brush hogs. If you've seen this happen to blades before, if you have any other scenario you think might have caused this. But I did use this a little bit last year when I first got it, and I never was really happy with the way it cut. It always seemed like it just, I was cutting some really tall stuff, but it didn't seem like it cut very clean, and it kind of left a lot of stuff behind. And I'm confident that this crazy bent blade is the problem. So I actually can't wait to give this a try probably tomorrow with these new blades on it and see how it does. So I'm going to get these installed, and this thing will be officially done and ready for its maiden voyage. Okay guys, so I know I said that I was done with this thing, but there's one more thing that I need to do, and I just feel like I need to do it to make this 100% complete. So this Bush Hog is made for a bigger tractor. I can tell for sure, because on my B2601, my 3-point arms, when I'm hooked up, when I have everything positioned correctly so that I've got proper amount of play in in this chain basically that lifts the back end, I can only get the rear tail wheel about 8 inches off the ground. And that's because these lift points are so high on this particular machine. And I've played with different ways, but the only way I can change that is to shorten up this link here in this chain. But the problem is, the shorter I make this, the less flexibility I have on the actual cutter for riding through low spots and high spots and so forth without getting jammed up. So I've known for a long time that I really wanted these lift points to be lower. I just didn't think I wanted to mess with it, but I'm going to. So just to kind of give you an idea, right now these are about 20.5 inches off the ground as it's sitting flat. And I looked at some other machines just sitting at equipment places, and I'm seeing that for most of these kind of small size cutters, that the lift points are more like 16 inches off the ground. And at 16 inches, my 3-point, my lift bars on my tractor, 16 inches is basically where they're level to the ground. So I think that makes a lot of sense actually. So by doing that, I'll have a lot more control over you know, where the cutter actually rides. I'll be able to take this out to the full, I think I should be able to take this out to the last length of this chain, so then I have maximum flexibility for it to ride up and down over high and low spots, and I should be able to get it nice and high off the ground. And I didn't mention, a lot of the reason why that's a problem is when I put this on a trailer, because I can't get this back in very high, it drags up the ramps up the trailer, and it's not a pleasant loading experience. So that's the other thing that I kind of accomplished by this. So I ran out and I picked up some new lift pins. So I'm just going to drill some holes in this frame here, roughly 16 inches off the ground. I'm going to put those in, and then I'm just going to basically have 2 lift points on this thing, and it'll be fine. If somebody ever wants to use it with a bigger tractor, they can use those higher points. For my purposes, that lower point's going to be much better. Tell you what, they might just be cordless, but those Makita drills have a lot of torque. All right, I like that much better. I can get way more lift. Should be nice for transporting it. Really nice for putting it on the trailer. And incidentally, if anybody like me hates fighting your 3-point arms when you're trying to hook up an implement, stay tuned. I've got an idea. I'm gonna build something to make that a whole lot easier. So an adjustable, basically just a simple adjustable bar that you can push those out and release a lot easier. But anyway, I've got an idea that I'm going to do on that, so stay tuned and watch for that video. But time to get this thing, now that I've got new 3-point adjustment on here, I just want to double check and make sure that all my settings are correct. I think I'm going to go ahead and take this chain out to the very the final link, the outside link, and that way I'll have maximum amount of float in the rotary cutter as I'm mowing, and then it's going to be ready to take this thing out and give it a run. All right guys, so my first couple of tests here, definitely a success. Just showed you a little bit here, cutting some, I don't even know what those are. I call them iron weeds. I don't know what they are. Some big, tall, probably, you know, 6 foot tall or so. Smoked through those, no problem. Nice clean cut, and I've already cut along the side of our road, kind of the right-of-way area, some stuff that was probably 2-3 feet tall. Cut really nice there. I didn't get that on video, but hey, I'm happy. Cut's great, and as long as it holds up, I'm going to be really happy with you know, with what I've got. And I don't even know. I think I paid like $350 or something like that for that cutter. You know, I probably have $100. Well, and I've got some paint and stuff, so I don't know. Maybe I've got 150 bucks between blades and paint and hardware and bolts and stuff that I've replaced in it. So, you know what, maybe 500 bucks. And, you know, to go buy a new king cutter, something like that from Tractor Supply for a 5-footer, I don't even know for sure, but they're probably $1,100 or $1,200. And this thing, honestly, is probably built better than those. So, happy with the results. I've got, I'll show you what I kind of started back here. This is actually my septic field. So my tank, you can see the alarm tower there, the alarm post. This whole mess back here is actually my septic field. And as you can see, I haven't done anything to maintain this thing in a few years. It's really overgrown, and I need to just kind of get it cut down. I'm not worried about grass and stuff growing on my septic mounds back here in the timber, but I don't want to have trees and stuff growing in there. And then I've got 2 dead trees actually that I've got to get cut down so I can make sure that they fall the direction that I want, so they don't fall on my laterals and crush those and bust those. So I'm going to stop this video. It's gotten long, a lot longer than what I had originally planned. If you've watched this long, I really appreciate it. I gotta clean this up. I've got a farm that I just bought that's got about 2 or 3 acres of really thick overgrown pasture. I think I'd mentioned before in the video that was really kind of the primary reason why I decided to fix up this brush hog. And I'll put it through its paces there. There's trees and all kinds of stuff that's grown up in that pasture that I want to get cleaned out. It's a house that I'm going to do a whole series on that, actually, a house that I bought to flip basically. But anyway, I appreciate you guys watching. If you found this helpful, entertaining, whatever, do me a big favor, hit that like button. Subscribe to my channel if you like seeing content like this. I've got a bunch more coming up, and we'll see you in the next video.